Tonight, let's journey together into one of the greatest stories ever told. A tale of hobbits, wizards, and one small ring of gold. This story is long and winding, perfect for drifting off to. No need to stay awake for every word, just let it carry you. At its heart, this is a story about small people doing brave things. About friendship that endures when all hope seems lost forever. We begin in a place called the Shire. Green rolling hills, round colorful doors, gardens overflowing with vegetables. And hobbits going about their peaceful lives. But there's something hidden here. A small golden ring, plain and unadorned, holding power enough to destroy or enslave all of Middle-earth. This is the Third Age of Middle-earth, a time when elves are fading, dwarves delve their mountains, and men prepare for wars yet to come. In the Shire, tucked into a hillside, there's a very fine hobbit hole called Bag End. Round green door, brass knob right in the middle. Inside lives Bilbo Baggins, 111 years old today. He's throwing a party, perhaps the grandest the Shire has ever seen. Down the lane comes a cart pulled by a tired horse. On the seat sits an old man in gray, pointed hat, long beard, eyes twinkling. Gandalf. The children shout, and the wizard smiles, setting off a burst of blue and gold sparks from his cart that makes them squeal with delight. That evening, the party field glows with lanterns. Hobbits dance on tables, children chase fireflies, and music fills the warm summer air. Bilbo stands to give his speech, thanking everyone for coming. Then, mid-sentence, he slips something onto his finger and simply vanishes into thin air. Back at Bag End, Gandalf is waiting. The wizard's eyes are troubled, his voice unusually stern as he speaks of the ring Bilbo carries. "My precious," Bilbo hisses, his hand hovering protectively over his pocket. Then he catches himself, horrified by the strange words that escaped his own mouth. With effort that seems to pain him physically, Bilbo leaves the ring on the mantelpiece. He walks out of Bag End humming, bound for Rivendell at last. 17 years pass quietly. Frodo Baggins, Bilbo's young cousin and heir, now lives alone at Bag End with the ring in an envelope, nearly forgotten. Then Gandalf returns, appearing suddenly at the door. His face is grim, his robes travel-stained. He has spent years in archives, searching for answers about that ring. "Throw it in the fire," Gandalf commands. Frodo hesitates, then obeys. Letters of flame appear, burning bright in a language not spoken for ages. The One Ring. Forged in secret by the Dark Lord Sauron in the fires of Mount Doom. Into it he poured his cruelty, his malice, his will to dominate all life. The Dark Lord is rising again in the land of Mordor. His fortress rebuilds, his armies gather, and his thought searches endlessly for the ring he lost long ago. The ring cannot stay in the Shire. Gandalf says quietly, "You must leave, Frodo. Take it far from here before his servants find you." Outside the window, a rustling. Gandalf moves fast, yanking up a hobbit by his pointed ears. It's Sam Gamgee the gardener, who's heard everything about the secret ring. Strange reports drift into the Shire. Tall figures in black robes riding black horses, asking questions about a hobbit named Baggins with a voice that makes blood run cold. In the dark before dawn, Frodo and Sam slip out of Bag End. The road before them winds away toward distant mountains and dangers they cannot yet imagine. Behind them, the lights of Hobbiton flicker and fade. Ahead, the darkness waits. And on a chain around Frodo's neck, something small and golden grows heavier with every step. In the woods, Frodo and Sam stumble into Merry and Pippin, two cousins already packed and ready. They knew Frodo was leaving, and they refused to let him go alone. "You need people of intelligence on this sort of mission," Pippin declares confidently. Merry sighs and shakes his head, but cannot hide his smile at his cousin's boldness. The road darkens as they travel. One evening, a terrible sound reaches them, hoofbeats slow and deliberate, coming closer through the twilight mist swirling between ancient trees. They dive beneath massive tree roots, pressing themselves into the earth. Above them, a black rider stops. Its hooded head tilts down, sniffing, searching for something precious. Frodo's hand moves toward the ring without his willing it. The gold calls to him, whispering that he should put it on, reveal himself to the servant waiting above. Sam grabs Frodo's wrist, breaking the spell. The rider moves on, deceived for now. The hobbits lie still, hearts pounding, barely daring to breathe until silence returns. Through the old forest they flee, where trees seem to move when you're not looking. The paths twist and change, leading them deeper into ancient, watchful woodland darkness. A booming voice echoes between the trunks. A figure appears, dressed in bright blue and yellow, with feathers in his hat. Tom Bombadil, master of wood and water, singing nonsense. Tom leads them to his house where Goldberry waits, River, daughter with flowers in her hair. They rest and eat, and listen to songs older than the hills themselves. But the barrow downs await beyond Tom's borders. Ancient burial mounds where whites still guard treasures of kings, dead before hobbits existed in all of Middle-earth's long history. Cold hands drag Frodo into darkness. He wakes in a tomb, his friends laid out beside him, a white's pale face hovering close, blade raised for sacrifice beneath the earth. Frodo calls for Tom, and Tom comes singing through stone. The white shrieks and flees. Tom gives each hobbit an ancient blade from the treasure, weapons made to fight such darkness. At last they reach Bree, a village where men and hobbits live together. The prancing pony inn glows with warmth and noise, promising safety, hot food, and real beds tonight. Inside, smoke and laughter fill the common room. But in a dark corner, a weathered stranger sits alone, watching the hobbits with keen gray eyes beneath his hood. Pippin talks too freely. The locals grow curious about Baggins, about the Shire, asking questions. Frodo jumps on a table to distract them, begins to sing a silly drinking song. He slips, falls backward off the table, and somehow impossibly, the ring slides onto his finger. Frodo vanishes completely, leaving only empty air and shocked silence behind him. Strong hands pull Frodo upstairs. The stranger reveals himself as Strider, a ranger, friend to Gandalf. He knows what the ring is, and what hunts for it this very night. They are coming, Strider says simply. He moves the hobbits to another room, stuffs their beds with pillows. Somewhere in the night, black riders enter Bree's gates without challenge. Screams rip through the darkness. Black blades stab through pillow and blanket where hobbits should have slept. The riders shriek in frustrated rage when they find only feathers and straw. Before dawn, they slip away with Strider leading. Days of hard walking follow. Through trackless wilderness where no paths exist and no map shows the way forward through wild lands. The hobbits learn Strider's true name is Aragorn. He carries a broken sword at his hip, an heirloom of kings, and moves through the wild as if born to these lands. Weathertop rises from the plain, a ruined watchtower on a lonely hill. Aragorn leads them up for the view, but also because it is where Gandalf might look for them. Night falls cold and starless. Aragorn leaves to scout the paths below. The hobbits huddle together near a small fire, trying not to imagine shapes moving in the darkness beyond. 5 shapes materialize from the darkness below. Black robes flowing without wind, climbing the ancient stairs in terrible silence. The Nazgul have found them at last on this exposed hilltop. The hobbits draw their barrow, blades, but their arms feel weak and cold. The witch king steps forward, crown of shadow on his invisible head, reaching for Frodo with hunger beyond mortality. The ring whispers promises of safety. Without choosing to, Frodo slips it on his finger. The world shifts, goes gray and ghostly, and now he sees the Nazgul truly. The witch king stabs downward with a blade that glows with cold corruption. Pain like ice and fire tears through Frodo's shoulder. His scream echoes across the empty lands below. Aragorn charges through the ruins with blazing brands in both hands, roaring. Fire, the riders fear. They retreat from flame and fury, shrieking into the night that spawned them. But the damage is done. A shard of the Morgul blade broke off inside Frodo, working its way toward his heart. If it reaches, he will become a wraith himself. Forever. 5 days of desperate travel follow. Frodo grows colder, paler, slipping further from the world of the living. Aragorn barely sleeps, driving them forward toward Rivendell's hidden borders. A rider appears on a white horse, moving swift as wind through the trees. Not a rider of darkness, but an elf woman, Silver and Starlight, Arwen of Rivendell, come to find them. She takes Frodo on her horse. The white mare flies through the forest faster than any natural creature. Behind them, the black riders pursue, their shrieks tearing the air. The ford of Bruinen lies ahead. Arwen splashes across with Frodo, then turns on the far bank. 9 riders halt at the water's edge, demanding she surrender the halfling immediately. She speaks words of power, and the river answers. Waters rise into shapes of white horses, crashing down upon the Nazgul, sweeping riders and mounts away into churning flood. Frodo wakes in a soft bed, sunlight warm on his face. Gandalf sits beside him, smoking his pipe, alive and smiling. They are in Rivendell, the last homely house east of the sea. "I'm sorry I wasn't there," Gandalf says quietly. His eyes are troubled. He explains how Saruman the White has betrayed them, turned to evil, imprisoned Gandalf in his black tower. Saruman believes he can find the ring, use it, make himself Lord of Middle-earth. But there is no controlling the ring, only being controlled by it. That is its nature and curse. Eagles rescued Gandalf from Saruman's tower. Now all the free peoples gather in Rivendell for a council. Dwarves from the mountains, elves from distant forests, men from kingdoms of the south. In Rivendell's council circle, Frodo sees faces from legends come to life. Legolas the elf, archer of the woodland realm, sits with ageless calm, silver hair catching morning light. Gimli, son of Gelsin, represents the dwarves, a fierce warrior with braided red beard, and an axe always within reach. He eyes the elves with generations of mistrust carved into his frown. A man rises to speak of Gondor's struggle against Mordor. Boromir, eldest son of the steward, tall and proud, bearing a great horn and the weight of his failing kingdom. Arwen reveals the ring's history in full. How it was cut from Sauron's hand 3,000 years ago by a man named Isildur, who chose to keep it instead of destroying it then. "I was there," Arwen says heavily. "I watched Isildur take it, begged him to cast it into the fire. But the ring had already begun to corrupt him, and he refused. The shards of Narsil lie on the council table, the sword that cut the ring from Sauron's hand. Broken but not destroyed, waiting for the return of its rightful heir to reforge it." Aragorn rises. He is revealed as Isildur's heir, the lost king of Gondor, wandering in exile. Boromir stares at him with sudden recognition, and something that might be resentment. Arguments fill the council. The ring cannot be hidden forever. Sauron will find it eventually. It cannot be used. It corrupts all who try. There is only one option remaining that may succeed. The ring must be taken back to Mount Doom, where it was forged, and cast into the fire. Only there can it truly be unmade, destroying Sauron's power forever. Into the silence, a small voice speaks. "I will take it," Frodo says. Everyone turns to look at the little hobbit. "I will take the ring to Mordor, though I do not know the way." Gandalf steps forward first. "I will help you bear this burden, Frodo Baggins." Aragorn kneels before the hobbit. "You have my sword, Legolas."
"Gimli."
"And my axe." Boromir hesitates, then rises. "Gondor will see it done." Sam bursts from the bushes where he's been hiding. "Mister, Frodo's not going anywhere without me." Elrond sighs but does not argue further. 9 companions for 9 riders. The Fellowship of the Ring is formed. Different peoples who mistrust each other bound together by hope and desperation on the edge of winter darkness. The sword Narsil is reforged in the elven smithies, renamed Andril, Flame of the West. Aragorn straps it to his side, a king's weapon for a king who will not yet claim his throne. On a cold morning, the Fellowship departs Rivendell. The road leads south, then east, toward mountains and shadows. Behind them, Elrond watches from his terrace, hope and fear mingled in his ancient eyes. They try to cross the misty mountains through the high pass of Caradhras. But Saruman's power reaches out, summoning storms, burying them in snow that falls sideways with malicious intent. They cannot go over the mountain. They cannot go around it. Gandalf makes a grave decision. They must go under it, through the ancient dwarf kingdom of Moria, abandoned now for decades. Gimli speaks with pride of Moria, Casa d'Mm, greatest mansion of the dwarves. His cousin Balin led an expedition to reclaim it years ago. They will find welcome there, he assures them. The doors of Durin stand hidden by lake and cliff. In moonlight, Ithilden tracings appear on stone, showing gates and archway. A riddle written in Elvish script above the threshold. "Speak, friend, and enter," reads the riddle. Gandalf tries every spell he knows, growing frustrated. The password is not magic at all, but simply the Elvish word for friend, melon. The doors open onto darkness and the smell of old death. Gimli's hope dies in his throat. Skeletons of dwarves litter the entrance. Arrows still in their bones, a battle lost long ago. Something stirs in the lake behind them. Tentacles erupt from the water, grasping at Frodo, dragging him toward the depths. The Fellowship hacks and slashes, pulling him free just barely in time. The creature collapses the doors behind them, sealing them in darkness. There is no going back now. 4 days to cross Moria, guided only by Gandalf's memory and his staff's faint light. Through endless corridors they walk, past chasms that drop into forever, across bridges so narrow they must go single file. Moria is vast beyond imagining, beautiful even in its ruin and decay. Frodo senses something following them in the dark. Pale luminous eyes watching from behind, staying just outside the light. Gollum, Gandalf confirms. The creature has followed them from the beginning. Gandalf tells Gollum's story quietly. Once a hobbit, like creature named Smeagol, corrupted by the ring he found in a river, twisted over centuries into something wretched and pitiable and dangerous. It's a pity Bilbo didn't kill him when he had the chance. Frodo mutters bitterly. Gandalf shakes his head. Pity stayed his hand. Do not be too quick to deal out death in judgment. They reach a junction where Gandalf cannot remember the way. 3 passages lead onward. The Fellowship rests while the wizard sits and thinks, pipe smoke curling up into the dark above. Morning, or what would be morning above, brings clarity. Gandalf chooses the passage that smells less fall. They descend deeper, finally emerging into a space so vast the light cannot find its ceiling. Behold the great realm of the dwarf, city of Dwarodelf, Gandalf announces. Even in ruin, the craftsmanship takes their breath away. But Gimli has spotted something, and he runs toward a side chamber. Balin's tomb. A stone coffin in a chamber strewn with dwarf skeletons and broken weapons. Gimli falls to his knees before his cousin's grave, tears running into his beard without sound. Gandalf finds a book, a record of Balin's last days. The writing grows hasty as he reads, "Orcs came." Then drums in the deep. The final words, "They are coming." A clatter echoes through Moria. Pippin has knocked a skeleton into a well. The noise of its fall seems to go on forever, growing distant, then stopping. Then, drums in the deep. Orcs swarm through every passage. The Fellowship barricades the door, but the hinges buckle. Through the gaps come goblin faces, snarling and eager. And behind them, something much larger bellows. The door bursts open. Battle erupts in the tomb chamber. Legolas sends arrows flying with impossible speed. Gimli's axe rises and falls. Aragorn and Boromir fight back-to-back as brothers might. A cave troll smashes through the doorway, chains dragging behind it. It spots Frodo, charges. The hobbits scatter. The troll's spear catches Frodo, driving him against the wall with terrible force. But Frodo rises. The mithril shirt Bilbo gave him, hidden beneath his clothes, turns the spear. He gasps for breath but lives. Sam's relief is almost physical, washing over his round face. More drums echo. More orcs coming. The Fellowship runs, racing through corridors toward the bridge, thousands of goblins pouring after them, surrounding them on ledges and pillars on all sides above and below. Then the orcs stop. They freeze, listen, and begin to flee. Something else is coming. Fire glows in the deep passages behind. A sound like thunder mixed with burning builds and grows. Gandalf whispers, his face gone gray. A demon of the ancient world. This foe is beyond any of you.
Run!
The Fellowship obeys, sprinting toward the bridge of Khazad-dûm. The Balrog bursts into view. Shadow and flame given terrible form, wings of darkness stretching across the hall, a whip of fire crackling in one hand, sword of red flame in the other. Across a narrow stone bridge the Fellowship races. Below, darkness beyond fathoming falls away forever. Gandalf stops at the bridge's center, turning to face the approaching horror alone behind them. "You cannot pass." Gandalf's voice fills the cavern. "I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Aenor."
Go back to the shadow! You shall not pass!
Staff meets blade, the bridge cracks, crumbles. The Balrog plunges into the abyss with a scream that seems to shake the mountain itself to its roots in the deep earth below. But the whip snakes up from the dark, catches Gandalf's ankle, drags him to the edge. He clings to broken stone, looking up at Frodo with ancient eyes suddenly full of peace and sorrow. "Fly, you fools," he says. Then he lets go, falls. Gandalf the Grey disappears into the darkness of Moria, and with him falls the Fellowship's hope, their guide, their light against the shadow. Aragorn drags Frodo bodily from the edge. The Fellowship stumbles out of Moria into daylight they thought they'd never see again. The sun is too bright, the air is too clean, nothing feels real. Sam weeps openly. Merry and Pippin cling to each other. Boromir bows his head. Only Legolas looks puzzled by grief, as elves know death differently, though his eyes hold sorrow deep as wells. Aragorn allows no time for mourning. Orcs will follow. By nightfall they must reach Lothlorien, the Golden Wood, where perhaps they can find shelter and a moment to breathe and remember. The Golden Wood rises before them as evening falls, unlike any forest they have seen. Malorn trees silver and gold, leaves glowing with inner light, air thick with magic and ancient memory. Elven arrows appear at every throat before they can take 3 steps. Haldir of Lothlorien steps forward, silver-haired and suspicious. "The dwarf cannot enter," he says flatly. Gimli bristles with ancient grievance. Aragorn argues in Elvish, invoking old alliances and desperate need. Haldir relents, though Gimli must be blindfolded. "Then blindfold us all," Aragorn says calmly. "We go together or not at all." They climb endless stairs spiraling up the greatest Malorn tree. When the blindfolds come off, they stand on a platform among the stars, the city of Caras Galadon spreading around them through the branches. Galadriel and Celeborn descend to meet them, the Lord and Lady of the Golden Wood. Both shine with light that seems to come from within, ancient beyond measure, beautiful beyond bearing. Galadriel's eyes meet each of them in turn. Her gaze looks through surface and bone into the secret heart. Some look away, unable to bear her knowing all that they hide within themselves. They speak of Gandalf, and Galadriel's light dims with grief. He was old friend, fellow bearer of power against the darkness. The world is lessened by his fall in ways not yet known. "Rest here," she tells them. "Stay as long as you need." Time moves differently in Lothlorien. The Fellowship settles among the golden boughs, grief mixing with desperate peace before the road continues east toward shadow. Days pass in Lothlorien like hours, or perhaps hours pass like days. The Fellowship rests, heals, but Frodo carries a growing weight. Galadriel asks him to look into her mirror of water. The mirror shows visions of what was, what is, what may yet come to pass. Frodo sees the Shire burning, hobbits in chains, Sam's face twisted with grief. He sees the eye searching for him, finding him. The ring pulls toward the water, toward the eye. Frodo understands at last how the ring works, how it calls to its master, how carrying it paints a target on his soul every moment. "I will give you the ring," Frodo says suddenly, desperately, holding it out toward Galadriel. "You are wise and powerful. You would use it better than anyone." He believes this completely, and he is wrong. Galadriel rises, and for a moment she changes. Terrible and beautiful as the dawn, treacherous as the sea, stronger than the foundations of the earth. All shall love her and despair if she takes the ring. Then she exhales and is herself again. "I pass the test," she says softly. "I will diminish and go into the west, and remain Galadriel." She will not take power that would destroy her wisdom. The fellowship prepares to leave Lothlorien. Galadriel gives each of them gifts. To Frodo, a veil containing the light of Eärendil's star, to shine in dark places when all other lights go out. Sam receives a box of earth from Galadriel's garden with a single Malorn seed. Gimli, astonishing himself and all the elves, asks for only a single hair from her golden head and receives 3. Grey elven boats carry them down the Anduin, the great river running south toward the sea. For days they paddle, watching shores for danger, resting on islands, the current doing much of the work. At night, Frodo sees Pale Eyes watching from the eastern shore. Gollum follows still, clinging to logs, swimming in their wake. The creature's obsession with the ring will not let him abandon the hunt. The Argonath appears, 2 towering statues of ancient kings, hands raised in warning to enemies, carved from living cliff millennia ago. Aragorn looks up at his ancestors with complex emotion written on his weathered face. Beyond the statues, the falls of Rauros thunder into mist. They must portage around, choose their path. East to Mordor directly. South to Gondor first. The fellowship is uncertain and divided in their counsel. Frodo walks alone into the forest to think. The ring whispers constantly now, suggesting he claim it, use it, become a lord of terrible power. His will holds, but the effort grows every hour. Boromir follows him. At first his words seem kind, concerned for the quest, for Gondor, for the weakness of their position. But his eyes keep returning to the chain at Frodo's neck, hungry and strange. "Lend me the ring," Boromir says, his voice cracking with need. "Why do you recoil? I am no thief." But his hands reach forward unbidden, and his face twists into something desperate and alien. Frodo scrambles away, terror giving him speed. He puts on the ring to escape, vanishing from sight. The world turns gray and shadowland, and far away. The eye swings toward him, feeling his presence exposed. From the high seat of Amon Hen, Frodo sees with ring, enhanced vision across all of Middle-earth. Armies massing, darkness spreading, and always the eye seeking him, drawn by the ring like iron to lodestone. He tears off the ring just before the eye fully finds him. The decision crystallizes in that moment. He cannot go to Gondor with Boromir. He cannot risk corrupting anyone else he loves with this burden. He must go to Mordor alone. One small hobbit, one terrible burden, one impossible road. He takes a boat and begins to paddle across the river toward the eastern shore, and the shadow waiting there. Sam sees the boat leaving. Without thinking, he runs into the water. He cannot swim. The water closes over his head, his feet find no bottom. But he will not let Frodo go alone, never. Frodo pulls Sam into the boat, both of them weeping. "I'm going to Mordor alone," Frodo insists. "Of course you are," Sam replies, catching his breath. "And I'm going with you." The matter is settled then. Behind them on the western shore, orcs attack the fellowship. Ugly Uruk-hai, Saruman's bred warriors, pour from the forest. Merry and Pippin are grabbed, dragged away. The fellowship shatters in blood and chaos. Boromir finds himself again in the battle. The madness of the ring fades as his sword rises to defend the little ones. He fights toward Merry and Pippin, blowing his great horn to summon aid. An arrow takes him in the chest. He staggers but keeps fighting. Another arrow, another. Still he swings his sword. Still he struggles toward the hobbits, who are being carried away screaming his name. He falls to his knees. The Uruk captain approaches to finish him, but Aragorn appears, sword flashing. The orc dies. Aragorn kneels beside Boromir, cradling his head, grief and forgiveness meeting together. "I would have followed you, my brother, my captain, my king," Boromir whispers, his eyes close. The man who wanted the ring dies, defending those who never needed its power, only friendship and courage. They lay Boromir in a boat with his sword and cloven horn. Let the current take him over the falls of Rauros. Gondor's son goes home by water, carried by the river toward the sea and rest. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli cannot follow Frodo into Mordor, but they can pursue the orcs who took Merry and Pippin. 3 hunters against an army, but they are fast and the orcs are burdened. For 3 days they run, barely sleeping, crossing the plains of Rohan like the wind itself. Aragorn reads tracks that would be invisible to other eyes, leading them ever closer to their quarry ahead. Meanwhile, the hobbits are carried day and night by the Uruk-hai, slung over shoulders, fed foul orc drink that burns their throats. Merry and Pippin whisper plans to each other when their captors are not watching closely. Horsemen appear on the horizon, golden-haired riders with spears and bright eyes. Eomer leads the riders of Rohan, and they care nothing for Saruman's orders. They surround the orc pack and slaughter them at dawn. In the chaos, Merry cuts Pippin's bonds with an orc blade. They crawl into the tall grass, then run toward the dark line of Fangorn Forest, ancient and forbidden, where no horse lord would follow. The 3 hunters find only the smoldering remains of orc bodies. Eomer met them on the plain, shared what happened, lent them horses. But of hobbits, there is no sign among the dead or living, but Aragorn finds hobbit tracks leading into Fangorn Forest. They follow, entering the dark wood where trees seem to watch and breathe, and remember every wrong ever done to their kindred by axe or fire. A white figure appears in the forest shadows. They assume enemy draw weapons. But the figure turns, and it is Gandalf transformed, returned from death wearing white instead of gray, more powerful than before. "I am Gandalf the White now," he says calmly. He fell with the Balrog into the deepest depths, fought it for days until he threw it down from the mountain's peak, then died and was sent back. The hobbits are safe, Gandalf assures them. They have met the Ents, the Treat Shepherds, ancient creatures who have cared for forests since before elves awoke. Now there are more pressing matters in Rohan. Deep in Fangorn, Merry and Pippin ride on the shoulders of Treebeard, an Ent who looks like an ancient tree, come to life. He speaks slowly, thinks slowly, but his eyes hold wisdom of ages uncounted. The hobbits tell Treebeard about Saruman, about the destruction of forests for his war machines. The Ent grows angry slowly, like a fire catching in deep wood. There is no curse strong enough for such treachery. Treebeard calls an Entmoot, a gathering of his people to decide what action to take. Ents arrive from all corners of the forest, walking mountains of living wood, to debate in their slow and thorough way. Gandalf leads the hunters to Edoras, capital of Rohan. The golden hall of Medusild shines on its hill, but something is wrong. The king is sick, enslaved in mind by Saruman's spy, the counselor Wormtongue. Theoden King sits slumped on his throne, aged beyond his years, voice a whisper, eyes clouded. Wormtongue slithers beside him, speaking poison in his ear. But Gandalf did not come to talk to the serpent. Gandalf speaks words of power, commanding Saruman to leave this stolen body. Theoden writhes, fights, then gasps as the enchantment breaks. Years fall from his face. He is himself again, and his kingdom is burning. They tell Theoden of his son Theodred slain by orcs while the king lay enchanted. His grief is terrible but brief. There is no time for mourning when 10,000 Uruk-hai march toward his people. Eowyn, niece of the king, prepares her people for evacuation. Golden-haired shield maiden with a sword she knows how to use. She watches Aragorn with eyes that hold questions about duty and longing and another life. The people of Rohan flee toward Helm's Deep, an ancient fortress built into the mountain. Women, children, elderly, livestock, the whole nation on the road. Behind them, the enemy marches faster than they can run. Warg riders attack the column. Aragorn rallies the defenders' cavalry against wolves. In the chaos, a warg drags him over a cliff edge. Eowyn searches for him among the fallen, but he is not there. Aragorn survives barely. Washed up on a riverbank, his horse finds him, nudges him awake. He rides hard for Helm's Deep, and what he sees from the ridge stops his heart with cold dread. The fortress fills with frightened people. 300 soldiers to defend against 10,000. Theoden looks at his people and sees only death, so much death. Men can stand against such reckless hate. Then horns echo from the causeway. Elven warriors march in, sent by Elrond, honoring the ancient alliance. Haldir of Orien leads them, smiling grimly. We have come to honor that allegiance. We are proud to fight alongside men once more. Night falls and rain begins. The Uruk-hai army surrounds the fortress, a sea of torches and hatred. Their war drums pound. Their chants shake the air. The battle for Helm's Deep begins in darkness and storm. Arrows fly from the walls. Legolas becomes a blur of deadly motion, firing faster than eyes can follow. Gimli counts kills, competing with the elf even in this desperate hour. Dark humor against dark night. Ladders crash against the walls. Uruk-hai pour over, and the fighting becomes hand-to-hand, desperate, brutal. For every orc that falls, 2 more take its place. The wall cannot hold forever against such numbers. A berserker Uruk runs into the culvert under the wall, carrying a torch toward Saruman's explosive device. Aragorn sees, screams warning. Legolas fires but cannot stop the creature in time before detonation ignites devastation. The wall explodes. Stone and bodies fly into the rain. A breach opens wide, and through it pours the enemy army. Haldir falls in the chaos. One of many elves who will not see tomorrow's dawn. Retreat to the Hornburg, the inner keep. The Ryodan's men fall back fighting, every step bought in blood. The doors close, but they shake with battering ram impacts. It cannot hold until dawn comes to save them. Fell deeds awake. The Iodan says, drawing his sword, now for wrath, now for ruin. And the red dawn. He will ride out to meet death with a sword in his hand, a king's death at least. The doors burst open. Thraodan's cavalry charges out into the mass of orcs, cutting deep, buying time, dying gloriously. And then, on the ridge above, a white rider appears in the first light of dawn. Gandalf leads the riders of Rohan, 2,000 horsemen charging down the impossible slope into the enemy's flank. The Uruk-hai turn too late. Between hammer and anvil, Saruman's army is crushed and broken utterly. The surviving orcs flee toward a forest that was not there the night before. The trees close around them. None emerge. The Ents have come, and they have brought their own vengeance walking behind them. The Entmoot has decided. Ents march on Isengard, a forest walking to war. Treebeard carries Merry and Pippin as the tree. Shepherds break the dam, flood Saruman's pits, drown his forges in cleansing water. Saruman is trapped in Orthanc, his tower the only thing standing above the flood. When Gandalf and the others arrive, they find Merry and Pippin sitting on the rubble, smoking pipe, weed, absurdly cheerful. Gandalf confronts Saruman, but cannot sway him from his fallen path. Wormtongue, trapped in the tower with the master he betrayed Rohan for, throws down a dark sphere in frustrated rage at Gandalf below. Pippin picks up the sphere before anyone can stop him. That night, he looks into it and Sauron's mind touches his. The hobbit barely survives, and now the enemy thinks Saruman has the ring-bearer. Meanwhile, far to the east, Frodo and Sam are lost in the rocky maze of Aemon. Days of climbing and crawling, with Mordor always visible on the horizon, smoking and waiting for them ahead. They catch Gollum at last, or perhaps he lets himself be caught. Sam wants to kill the creature, but Frodo shows pity. He makes Gollum swear on the ring to guide them to Mordor safely. Gollum leads them down from the rocks through marshes, always avoiding the straight path. Sometimes he seems almost helpful, almost friendly. Sam calls these moments Smay Ogle, and distrusts them more than Gollum's snarling malice. The dead marshes stretch for miles, fall water over ancient battlefield, where faces of the fallen still gleam beneath the surface. Don't follow the lights, Gollum warns. Frodo nearly falls in, transfixed by ghost faces below. At the Black Gate they arrive at last. Mordor's entrance, guarded by towers and armies beyond counting, gates of iron and teeth of stone. There is no sneaking through. Even Gollum admits this way is death. But Gollum knows another way. A secret way, a back door through the mountains. Stairs, he whispers. Endless stairs. Then a tunnel. Master will see. Smeagol will show them, yes, precious, we will. In Ithilien they are captured by men of Gondor, rangers led by Faramir, brother of Boromir. He questions them about their mission, about his brother's fate, about the strange creature that follows them so faithfully. Faramir learns they carry the ring, The thing his brother died for. The thing that drove Boromir to madness. For a moment temptation flickers in his eyes, but only for a moment. He is not his brother. I would not take this thing if I found it on the highway, Faramir says quietly. He lets them go, gives them supplies, warns them about the path Gollum intends to take. A warning Frodo cannot afford to heed. They climb the stairs of Cirith Ungol, endless steps carved into the mountain face. Up and up, bodies screaming. Ring growing heavier with every foot gained toward Mordor's heights, and the crack of doom beyond. Gollum has been whispering to himself more. Sam overhears plans, promises to delivery of the hobbits to something hungry and ancient waiting in a tunnel above. But when Sam confronts him, Gollum weeps innocence. The tunnel is dark beyond dark. No light reaches these passages. Frodo draws the veil of Galadriel and light blazes, revealing walls draped in webs thick as rope, old webs, patient webs, hungry webs. Shelob attacks from the darkness, a spider the size of a horse, bloated with ages of feeding, eyes glittering in the veil's light. The light drives her back. But she knows this darkness better than they know light. They flee through the web maze, burst out into night air. But Gollum ambushes them, trying to strangle Sam while Shelob catches Frodo from behind. Her stinger plunges into his neck. He falls, motionless, seemingly dead. Sam throws off Gollum, takes up Sting and the Feel. Grief and rage transform the simple gardener into something terrible. He drives Shelob back, wounds her, sends her screaming into her tunnels to nurse hatred forever. Sam cradles Frodo's body weeping. His master is dead. The quest failed. But he will finish it. He takes the ring from Frodo's neck, puts it around his own. He will carry on alone if he must. Then Orc voices. Patrol's coming. Sam hides as they find Frodo's body, hears them say the unthinkable is not dead, just paralyzed. She wanted him fresh. They carry Frodo away into the tower above. In the west, Gandalf rides to Minas Tirith with Pippin, arriving to find a city preparing for siege. Denethor rules as steward, but his mind is cracked by grief and the Palantir's corruption over years. Denethor blames Gandalf for Boromir's death, resents Aragorn's claim to the throne. His younger son Faramir still lives, but Denethor looks at him and sees only what he is not, and never the good that he is. Pippin pledges his service to Gondor in memory of Boromir, a small hobbit in overlarge armor, but his heart is true. Meanwhile, Gandalf lights the beacons of Gondor, calling for Rohan's aid across the mountains. In Rohan, Theoden sees the beacons burning. Merry watches the king's face as decision is made. Rohan will answer. Theoden declares. The muster is called. Every man who can ride summoned to Dunharrow for the great gathering. 6,000 spears gather at Dunharrow. It is not enough, and everyone knows it. Mordor's army is beyond counting. But they will ride anyway, because doing nothing is death and riding is at least a good death. Aragorn takes a different path. With Legolas and Gimli, he enters the paths of the dead, where an army of oath-breakers waits, cursed to never rest until they fulfill their ancient broken promise to Isildur's heir. Ghost soldiers fill the mountain, the dead who betrayed Isildur 3,000 years ago. Aragorn holds up Andril, proving his lineage. Fight for me, and I will hold your oath fulfilled. You will have peace at last. Eowyn is forbidden to ride to war. But war is where she can finally prove herself, finally escape the cage of expectations. She disguises herself as a man, takes Merry hidden under her cloak, and rides with the army anyway. Mordor's army reaches Minas Tirith. Siege towers roll forward, catapults fling fire and worse over the walls. The heads of dead Gondorian soldiers rain down on their own city. Despair seeps through every crack in the defenses. Faramir leads a desperate sortie to retake the ruined city before the gate fails and is carried back wounded, an arrow in his chest. Denethor's remaining son may be dying, and it breaks what was left of the steward's sanity. Denethor retreats into madness. He orders a pyre built for himself and Faramir to burn while the city falls. Pippin races to find Gandalf, the only one who might be able to stop a father from murdering his son. The gate breaks. Grond, the great battering ram, smashes through. The Witch King rides through the breach on his fell beast, and no living man bars his path. Gandalf alone faces him at the broken gate. Then horns. The Rohirrim have arrived, 6,000 riders cresting the Pelennor fields at dawn. Theoden gives the command that will ring in legend forever.
Ride now! Ride for ruin and the world's ending! Death!
The charge is glorious and terrible. 6,000 horses thunder across the fields, smashing into the orc ranks. For a moment, it seems they might actually win. The enemy breaks, flees, dies under hooves and spears. Then the M5 Makul arrive, war elephants the size of houses, carrying towers full of archers. They crash through cavalry like waves through sand. Theoden's horse is struck down by a fell beast, and the king is crushed beneath it. The Witch King descends on the fallen king to finish him. But Éowyn stands between them, small against the monster, defiant. "I will kill you if you touch him," she says. The wraith laughs. "No living man can kill me." "I am no man," Éowyn says, and drives her sword through his invisible face. The prophecy is fulfilled. The Witch King of Angmar, terror of the north, dies at the hands of those he never counted as threats, a woman and a hobbit. Theoden dies in Éowyn's arms, but he dies victorious, seeing her face. He tells her she is as dear to him as a daughter. Then the light leaves his eyes, and Rohan's king passes into legend forever. Black ships sail up the river, and for a moment despair returns. Corsair ships, enemies from the south. But Aragorn stands at the prow, and behind him pour not corsairs but the army of the dead. The dead sweep through the orc army like wind through smoke. Nothing mortal can stand against them. When it is finished, Aragorn releases them, and they dissolve into rest at last, their oath finally fulfilled. The battle is won, but the war is not over. In a tent of healing, Aragorn uses his kingly hands to draw Éowyn and Faramir and Merry back from the shadow of death, proving his lineage through healing, not just conquest. Sam fights his way into the Orc Tower, finds Frodo alive but nearly broken. He returns the ring, and they disguise themselves as orcs, walk out of Mordor's own fortress, and begin the last terrible march to Mount Doom. Across the ash plains of Mordor they stumble. No water, no food, the ring dragging Frodo down with every step. Sam gives him his share of water, carries the packs, but he cannot carry the ring itself. At the Black Gate, Aragorn leads the remaining armies in a final distraction. They cannot win, only buy time. For Frodo, Aragorn says, and charges into the enemy host, giving the hobbits their only chance. The slopes of Mount Doom. Frodo cannot walk. Sam lifts him onto his back. "I can't carry the ring for you, but I can carry you, step by step." The gardener carries his master toward the fire. Gollum attacks one final time, struggling for the ring on the doorstep of Doom itself. Frodo throws him off, enters the Sammath Nor, stands at the edge of the fire, the crack of Doom yawning below, ready to end it all. "The ring is mine," Frodo says and puts it on his finger. At the last possible moment the ring wins. Frodo claims it, and far away, the Eye of Sauron swings toward the mountain with terrible joy and terrible wrath. Gollum leaps on the invisible Frodo, biting, tearing. He bites off Frodo's finger, ring and all. For one moment he holds his precious again, dancing with joy on the edge. Then he falls, and the ring falls with him into the fire below. The ring melts, Mount Doom erupts, the Eye screams and shatters. Barad-dûr crumbles. Across all Mordor the shadow lifts, and the orcs flee or fall. Sam and Frodo collapse on a rock as lava flows around them, waiting for the end that never comes, because eagles are flying toward them through the ash, and Gandalf is with them, and they will live to see the Shire again. Now let me tell you about the man who created this world. Picture an Oxford professor, pipe in hand, papers scattered across his desk, inventing languages for peoples who had never existed until he dreamed them. John Ronald Reuel Tolkien was born in 1892 in South Africa, but his earliest memories were of England. Green countryside, ancient trees, villages with names like poetry. This became his Shire, his heart's true home. His mother taught him Latin before he was 10, igniting a love of languages that would burn his whole life long. By 12, he was inventing his own languages, complete with grammar, history, and evolving phonetics. His mother died when he was 12. The grief never fully left him, but she had given him two unshakable gifts, his Catholic faith and his love of languages. Both would shape everything he created afterward forever. At school, he found friends who shared his strange passions. They formed a club, created languages together, read each other poems and invented tongues. These friendships would define his life until war took most of them away. He fell in love with Edith Bratt when he was 16. His guardian forbade him to see her until he was 21. He obeyed, painfully, then wrote to her on his birthday, and she agreed to marry him. Then came 1914, and all of Europe began to die. Tolkien enlisted, trained, and shipped to France just in time for the Battle of the Somme, one of the bloodiest battles in human history's long record. The Somme killed 20,000 British soldiers on its first day alone. Tolkien served as a signals officer, running messages through mud and wire and gas while shells turned the world into a wasteland of craters and corpses. His closest friends died in those trenches. The boys who had invented languages with him, who had shared his dreams, went into the mud of France and never came out. By the war's end, only one remained alive. Trench fever sent him home before the war ended. As he recovered in a hospital bed, he began to write. Not about the war directly, but about a world where good and evil were clear, where friendship mattered against darkness. He called these early stories the Book of Lost Tales. Elves and men and great battles, gods and heroes and the making of the world. The mythology that would eventually become the Silmarillion, the foundation under everything else he built. After the war, he became a professor of Anglo-Saxon at Oxford. He taught Beowulf and medieval literature, but in the margins of his academic work, Middle-earth kept growing, demanding more stories, more languages, more depth. One day, marking examination papers, he found a blank page. Without thinking, he wrote, "In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit." He had no idea what a hobbit was, but he knew he needed to find out. The Hobbit began as bedtime stories for his children. He wrote it down, illustrated it himself, never intended publication. But a former student showed it to a publisher, and in 1937, Bilbo Baggins went public with his unexpected journey. The Hobbit was a surprise success. Children and adults alike fell in love with hobbits, with dragons, with adventures there and back again. The publisher immediately asked for a sequel. More about hobbits, they said. Tolkien had something else in mind. The Lord of the Rings took 12 years to write. He had no plan, no outline, just a growing sense of where the story needed to go. The tale grew in the telling. He would later say, surprised by his own creation. Every Tuesday night, he met with friends at a pub called the Eagle and Child. They called themselves the Inklings, and they read their works aloud to each other, criticized and encouraged in equal generous measure. C.S. Lewis became his closest friend and ally. "Keep going, Tollers," Lewis would say when Tolkien despaired of ever finishing. Lewis was writing his own mythology, Narnia, but he never stopped championing Middle-earth's slower, deeper creation. The Second World War came while Tolkien was still writing. His sons went to fight while he stayed home. A father too old for combat, but young enough to fear every telegram that might arrive with terrible news. Paper was rationed during the war. Tolkien wrote on the backs of examination papers, on scraps, on anything available. The story demanded to be told, and no shortage of supplies would stop him from telling it completely. He finished in 1949, but publication took another 5 years. Publishers were afraid of the length, the complexity, the lack of any comparable book to use for marketing. They finally published it in 3 volumes out of economic necessity only. The Fellowship of the Ring appeared in 1954, The Two Towers later that year, The Return of the King in 1955. Initial reviews were mixed, some praising, some dismissing. But readers knew. Readers felt the power immediately. Word of mouth spread like fire. Students passed copies to friends. Libraries could not keep enough on shelves. By the end of the decade, The Lord of the Rings had become a phenomenon unlike anything publishing had seen before. American paperback editions in the 1960s transformed readership into a movement. College campuses embraced hobbits as countercultural heroes, Smaug resisting corrupt power. Buttons appeared, Frodo lives. Gandalf for president. Go go Gandalf. Tolkien was bewildered by the hippie adoption of his work. He was a conservative Catholic professor, not a revolutionary. But he understood why the story spoke to those who felt small against vast industrial machinery of war and destruction. People kept asking if the story was allegory, if Sauron was Hitler, if the ring was nuclear weapons. Tolkien always denied it fiercely. "I dislike allegory," he said. The story meant itself, not something else forced into its shape. But he acknowledged applicability. The themes applied to many situations because they touched universal truths. Power corrupts. Friendship endures. Small kindnesses matter. Death is both gift and doom. These are not allegories but eternal human questions. His faith shaped everything without being obvious. No churches appear in Middle-earth, no explicit religion. But the moral structure, the belief in providence working through small choices, the importance of mercy, these are deeply Catholic in their bones. Gandalf's return from death echoes resurrection. The eucatastrophe, Tolkien's own coined word, describes the sudden joyous turn when all seems lost, when grace intervenes. It is the evangelium of fairy stories, he wrote, good news breaking through despair. Frodo's failure at the end troubled some readers. Why couldn't the hero destroy the ring himself? But Tolkien understood that some burdens are too great for any will. Only Providence, working through Gollum's obsession, could complete the task at last. Edith died in 1971, and Tolkien had Elthain inscribed on her gravestone. Beren and Eluthain, the mortal man and immortal elf who loved each other, was always their story, the tale closest to his heart in all his mythology. Tolkien followed Edith 2 years later in 1973. Beren was added to the stone beside her name. They lie together in a Catholic cemetery in Oxford. The author and his muse, united in death as they were in life and story. His son Christopher devoted his life to organizing the massive pile of unpublished material his father left behind. The Silmarillion was finally published in 1977, 4 years after Tolkien's death, revealing the deep mythology underneath everything. The Silmarillion tells the whole history of Middle-earth, from the creation of the world to the end of the First Age. It is denser, stranger, more mythological than the rings, but it provides the roots that make everything else grow. 12 more volumes of history of Middle-earth followed, showing the creative process, the dead ends, the sudden inspirations. Readers could watch Tolkien's mind working, building, revising, discovering what Middle-earth needed to be over decades of patient labor. Filmmakers tried for decades to adapt The Lord of the Rings. The Beatles wanted to star in it, with Kubrick directing. Tolkien said no. Animated versions came and went, respected but incomplete in their ambitious attempts. Then came Peter Jackson, a New Zealand filmmaker who loved the books from childhood. He proposed the impossible 3 films, shot simultaneously, using cutting-edge effects and real New Zealand landscapes as Middle-earth. The studio said yes, terrifyingly. For 3 years, cast and crew built Middle-earth in New Zealand. Actors became friends, families formed. Real fellowship bonds grew from shared hardship and joy. The production itself became a story of unlikely people achieving impossible dreams together. The Fellowship of the Ring premiered in December 2001, 3 months after the September 11 attacks. Audiences raw with grief and fear found solace in a story about ordinary people facing darkness with courage, friendship, and stubborn hope. Critics who expected failure were stunned into admiration. The film succeeded in ways no adaptation had managed before, capturing both the grandeur and the intimacy, the epic scope, and the quiet moments between friends facing certain doom together. The Two Towers, and The Return of the King followed in successive Decembers. Each film grew in scope and emotional power. The trilogy became a cultural event, a shared experience for millions who lined up year after year. The Return of the King won 11 Academy Awards, tying the all-time record. Best Picture for a fantasy film was unprecedented. Tolkien's vindication was complete, decades after critics had dismissed his work as childish escapism. New Zealand became Middle-earth in the global imagination. Tourism transformed overnight. The film locations became pilgrimage sites, with fans traveling from around the world to walk where hobbits had walked, where armies had clashed. Extended editions added hours of footage, and fans embraced the longer versions as definitive. Annual rewatch traditions formed. Friendships bonded over marathon viewings. New generations discovered the films and then found the books waiting with even more depth. The Hobbit films followed, more controversial, stretched from one book to 3 movies. Some loved them. Some felt the padding betrayed Tolkien's simpler story. But they brought new readers to the source, which is perhaps what matters most. Amazon's Rings of Power series brought the Second Age to screen, a billion-dollar gamble on stories Tolkien only sketched. The Tolkien estate watched carefully, protective of a legacy that had been mistreated too often before by lesser adaptations. Beyond adaptations, Tolkien transformed all of fantasy. Before him, fantasy meant fairy tales for children or pulp adventures. After him, it became a legitimate form for exploring the deepest questions of existence, with unmatched creative freedom. Dungeons and Dragons drew directly from Middle-earth, its elves and dwarves and orcs and halflings barely disguised. Every video game with these creatures, every fantasy novel with these races, traces back to Tolkien's imagination. The environmental movement found an ally in Tolkien's obvious love for trees, hatred of industrialization, grief for nature destroyed by machinery. The Ents' March on Isengard became a rallying image for those fighting to protect forests from exploitation. Anti-war readers found the Dead Marshes and the Pelennor Fields, horror and glory mixed until neither remained pure. Tolkien, who had seen the Somme, knew war's cost intimately and never let readers forget what victory demanded. Scholars built careers studying Middle-earth. Academic journals, conferences, university courses treated Tolkien's invented world with the seriousness once reserved for Shakespeare. The professor who wrote for his children became required reading in literature departments worldwide. The Tolkien Society, founded in 1969, continues to meet, publish, and celebrate. Annual events bring fans together from around the world. The community Tolkien accidentally created has outlived him by half a century and shows no sign of fading away. Translations brought Middle-earth to every language. Swedish, Japanese, Hebrew, Swahili, the story crossed every barrier. Tolkien himself corresponded with translators, advising on how to preserve meaning when names had meaning in their sounds and etymologies. In Japan, Tolkien found particular devotion. The themes of nature, honor, sacrifice, the mixing of melancholy with beauty. These resonated with existing traditions. Japanese fans created art, music, and scholarship that enriched the global conversation. Musicians found inspiration in the songs embedded throughout the text. Folk bands, heavy metal groups, symphony orchestras, all drew from Middle-earth. The music ranges from gentle hobbit drinking songs to apocalyptic Mordor doom, all rooted in Tolkien's own poetry. Visual artists rendered every scene, every character, every corner of Middle-earth in paint and digital media. Alan Lee and John Howe's illustrations became canonical, shaping how millions imagine the world Tolkien built with words alone originally. Tolkien would have been amazed and perhaps troubled by all of this. He was a private man who disliked attention. But he knew stories had power, and he had given the world a story with more power than he could ever have predicted. The languages live on. Fans learn Quenya and Sindarin, speak them at weddings and funerals, write poetry in tongues that never existed outside one professor's imagination. The languages came first, and they may last longest in the end. The world-building approach Tolkien pioneered is now standard practice. Every fantasy writer who creates history, languages, geography, and ecology before writing the story is following a path Tolkien cut through the wilderness of pure imagination first. Questions remain that Tolkien left unanswered. What lay beyond the mapped edges of Middle-earth? What happened in the Fourth Age after the elves departed? Some mysteries are better left unsolved, inviting imagination to fill the gaps differently. Sam's ending gives hope. He returns to the Shire, plants his Malorn seed, raises his children, and lives a long life of small good works. The hero doesn't have to be broken by heroism. Sometimes, you simply go home and tend your garden. But Frodo cannot heal. The wounds of ring and blade go too deep. He sails west with the elves, seeking a peace that Middle-earth cannot give him. Some sacrifices cost more than a lifetime can repay. Tolkien understood that not all who wander are lost, but not all who return are whole either. War changes people, burden breaks them. And sometimes the best ending possible still carries grief woven through its joy permanently. New readers discover the books every year. Children find them on library shelves, recommended by parents or teachers, and disappear into Middle-earth for the first time. The cycle continues, wonder renewed in each new generation of readers. The books are not perfect. Tolkien himself revised endlessly, never quite satisfied. The pacing lags in places, the poetry sometimes clunks, the women are too few. But perfection was never the point. Truth was and truth remains. The truth at the center is simple, small choices matter. Bilbo's mercy to Gollum in the Goblin Tunnels led to the ring's destruction generations later. A moment of pity changed the fate of the world forever. Tolkien believed in eucatastrophe, the good catastrophe, the sudden turn from despair to joy that fairy stories can give. It reflects, he said, the greatest eucatastrophe in history, the resurrection, hope born from death itself, darkness yielding to dawn. His letters reveal a man of deep faith, sharp humor, and occasional crankiness. He disliked automobiles, loved trees, preferred writing letters to making phone calls, and thought most people drove too fast everywhere they went mindlessly. He worried about the atom bomb, about industrialization, about the way modern life seemed to crush wonder out of the world systematically. Middle-earth was partly escape from that crushing, partly resistance to it through preserved imagination. But escape is not cowardice, he argued. The prisoner who escapes is not defeatist. Fantasy offers recovery, the ability to see familiar things freshly again. It offers consolation, the joy of the happy ending that heals. His essay, on fairy stories, remains essential reading for anyone who wants to understand fantasy's purpose. It defends imagination not as childish weakness, but as deeply human necessity, a way of touching truths too large for essays. Tolkien called his work sub-creation, humans making secondary worlds as echoes of the primary creation they inhabit. To create is to participate in something divine, however imperfectly, however humbly, with whatever skill is given. The languages remain his most personal legacy. Quenya has the feel of Finnish, Sindarin the music of Welsh. The black speech the harshness of industrial machinery. Sound carried meaning for Tolkien before story ever attached itself. He gave interviews sparingly in his later years, answered letters faithfully, and spent his final years in Bournemouth with Edith, far from Oxford. The professor who changed fantasy forever lived quietly, grateful for the ordinary pleasures life offered. Christopher Tolkien died in 2020 at 95, having spent 40 years organizing and publishing his father's unpublished work. The torch passed to new generations of scholars who never met the professor, but love what he left behind nonetheless. The Tolkien estate guards the legacy carefully, sometimes too carefully according to fans eager for more content. But they remember how the story was born in love and developed in privacy, and deserves protection from pure exploitation. Yet the core of the story cannot be protected because it was given away freely. Anyone who reads it carries Middle-earth inside them forever after. That is the nature of gifts freely given. What Tolkien wanted was simple to write the kind of story he wanted to read. No such story existed, so he created it. What began as self-indulgence became gift to the world, private pleasure transformed into public treasure. We read his work now in a different world than the one he lived in. Technology has transformed everything. But the story still speaks because friendship, courage, mercy, and hope are not technologies. They are eternal needs. And so we return to where we began tonight. An Oxford professor invented languages and needed stories to give them homes. The stories grew beyond all expectation, and now millions live inside them, at least for a while, finding rest. His grave in Oxford bears both names, both stories. Beren and Eleuthean, the mortal and the immortal who loved each other across the divide that death creates. Even his ending was part of the mythology in its way. The road goes ever on and on. Bilbo sang, and so it does. Tolkien's road continues through everyone who reads him, teaches him, adapts him, argues about him, loves him despite his flaws and because of his gifts. Perhaps you'll dream of hobbits tonight. Perhaps you'll dream of eagles or elves, or that one particular tree in your neighborhood that always seemed more awake than the others. That would please him, I think. The professor in his study, pipe in hand, scratching elvish letters, never knew what he was starting. He just wanted to tell good stories. Everything else was eucatastrophe, joy beyond expecting, the grace of unexpected gift. He wrote once that the greatest adventure is what lies ahead. Today and tomorrow are yet to be said. The past, even Middle-earth's past, is only practice for the stories that still remain to be lived and told. And so we leave the professor and his world for tonight. The books will wait on their shelves for whenever you want to return to them. Middle-earth is always there, patient as Ents, faithful as Sam Gamgee. What matters now is rest. What matters is the morning coming, and the simple pleasures waiting there: breakfast, sunlight, perhaps a walk somewhere green. Hobbit pleasures, available to all of us, free for the taking. Tolkien would approve. He loved breakfast. He loved gardens. He loved sitting with friends and talking about nothing important and everything important at the same time. Small pleasures were his religion in practice, sacraments of daily life. So take his story with you into sleep. Let hobbits and wizards and the green hills of the Shire follow you into dreams. You've earned rest tonight. Whatever burdens tomorrow may bring to your particular door. The story is in you now. It will be there when you wake. But for now let it settle, like snow in the mountains, like leaves falling in Lothlorien. Gently, quietly. The story will keep while you sleep. And so we come to the end of our journey tonight. But remember, where we began, small acts of courage matter. One hobbit's pity in a cave changed everything that followed after. Frodo could not have destroyed the ring alone. He tried, and at the final moment, he failed. That is not weakness but honest limitation. The truth of being mortal, being finite, being small. But Sam carried him up the mountain. Sam, who wanted nothing but to go home to his garden, his Rosie, his ordinary life. Sam, who walked into Mordor anyway, because his friend needed him to. Even Gollum had his part to play. Wretched, pitiable, dangerous Gollum, who could not resist the ring, who fell with it into the fire. His obsession ended Sauron. Providence works through broken vessels too. The wounds Frodo carried never fully healed. Every anniversary of the Morgul blade, he grew cold and distant, somewhere else in memory. Some things cost more than a lifetime can repay. That is also true. Tolkien knew grief intimately. His friends died in trenches. His mother died young. He poured that knowing into every page. And somehow the story is not dark, but hopeful despite all that loss, because of it. The Shire was worth saving. Not because it was powerful or important to the great lords of the world, but because it was home. Green hills, round doors, gardens full of vegetables and flowers. Small things, precious things. What mattered to hobbits matters to us too. Good food shared with friends. A comfortable chair by a warm fire. The changing seasons and the stars turning overhead. These are not small pleasures but the largest ones. Not grand ambitions but daily kindnesses make a life worth living. Bilbo's kindness to Gollum. Sam's kindness to Frodo. Faramir's kindness in letting the hobbits go. Small mercies multiplied, changing the world. Tonight, you don't need to carry anything heavy. No ring of power weighs around your neck. No dark lord searches for you across the miles. You are safe here, in this moment allowed to simply rest. Whatever burdens you carry in your waking hours, they can wait until morning. Even Sam had to sleep sometimes, even in Mordor. Rest is not weakness. Rest is how we gather strength for the road ahead. The eye cannot see you here. Let that sink in for a moment. No malice searches for you tonight. The darkness has no claim on this hour. You are simply yourself at rest, breathing slowly. Imagine yourself as a hobbit after a long journey, finally home. The door of Bag End closes behind you. The fire crackles low. The kettle hums. Everything is exactly where you left it, waiting for your return. The round door fits perfectly in its frame. The brass knob gleams in the firelight. Outside, the Shire sleeps under stars that have watched over it for countless ages, patient and eternal above the little hills. The fire burns lower now, settling into embers. Orange and gold and deep red, colors of warmth without flame, heat without danger. The kind of fire you can fall asleep beside safely and wake beside warm. The kettle has stopped humming. The house is quiet now except for small settling sounds, the gentle creaking of old wood, the whisper of wind around the round windows. Peaceful sounds, sleep sounds. Stars wheel slowly over the Shire, the same stars Sam looked up at from the darkness of Mordor. Even there, he found beauty beyond the shadow's reach. Beauty is stubborn that way, refusing to be fully eclipsed. "There's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo," Sam said in the darkness. "And it's worth fighting for." He was right then, and it remains true now, tonight. Wherever you are listening to these words, let the world grow quiet around you now. Let your thoughts slow like hobbits after second dinner. Full and comfortable and ready for sleep. No more tasks tonight, no more journeys until morning light. Eagles have flown their rescues. Battles have ended, swords sheathed, wounds bandaged. Kings have been crowned and have begun the slow work of rebuilding. The great deeds are done for tonight, only rest remains. In Minas Tirith, the white tree blooms again. In Rohan, horses run free across green plains. In the Shire, flowers grow where darkness once threatened. The world is healing slowly, as worlds do after great wounds. Friends reunited after long separation. Merry and Pippin returned to the Shire as heroes, though they preferred being remembered as themselves. Gimli and Legolas stayed friends across the old divide between their peoples forever after. Ships sail into the west carrying those whose time in Middle-earth has ended. Gandalf, Galadriel, Frodo at last. The white sails catch light that seems to come from beyond the world we know, from somewhere gentler. White gulls call over gray waves, the sound of farewell and the sound of welcome mixed together. The sea takes what the land cannot keep. Some journeys only end where water meets sky and both dissolve into light. Peace settles over Middle-earth like the first snow of winter, soft and quiet. The fourth age begins, an age of men, and the elves become memory. Beautiful and distant, stories grandparents tell by firelight. And peace settles over you too, if you'll let it. You've listened to this long story, this tale of friendship and courage and loss and hope. Now it's time to let the story rest, and rest yourself alongside it. The long tale is told at last. 300 pages became 3 films, became countless adaptations and discussions and dreams. But tonight, it becomes simply this, a voice in the dark, keeping you company until sleep arrives. Stories never really end, Tolkien knew. They pause. Characters rest between chapters while readers sleep, and when the book opens again, everyone picks up exactly where they stopped, as if no time passed at all. So the story pauses now for your sleep. The hobbits are safe, the ring is destroyed, Sauron is fallen. The friends are together or at peace. Nothing more is needed from you tonight except rest. Tomorrow brings new chapters in your own story. New challenges, perhaps new journeys. but also new joys, new friendships, new small victories over small darknesses. Tomorrow is its own adventure waiting quietly for you. New companions will find you, or old ones will return. Like the fellowship, unlikely people brought together by circumstance and staying together by choice. Your fellowship is out there, some of them already known, some still to come. But tonight, only rest matters. Only this breath, and the next one, and the slow settling of your body into comfort. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Tonight is for sleep, for dreams, for quiet repair. Breathe slowly now. Like Gandalf drawing on his pipe, slow and thoughtful. Like Sam working in his garden, patient and steady. Like Treebeard speaking. Unhurried, taking all the time in the world, because that's what time is for. Let Middle Earth fade gently from your mind now. Not forgotten, just released for the night. The Shire will be there tomorrow, and the next day, and whenever you want to return. Faithful as Sam, patient as stone. Like the gray havens appearing through mist, sleep approaches now. You can feel it, can't you? That softening at the edges of thought, that warmth spreading through tired muscles. Welcome it. This is the good ending you've earned. Safe harbor reached at last. The ship docks. The gangplank lowers. The western shores wait, greener than anything you've seen before. More beautiful than memory can hold. This is where rest lives. This is sleep's country. Journey's end, for tonight. The road goes ever on, but you don't have to walk it until you're ready. Rest here. The road will wait. Roads are patient that way, stretching forward whenever you need them again. Sleep well, friend. You've traveled far tonight, through all 3 ages of Middle-earth, through trenches and towers, through triumph and loss. You've earned this rest. You've earned this peace. You've earned this gentle ending. Until we meet again, whenever that may be. The story will be here waiting. The professor's gift keeps giving. The road goes ever on. But for now, only sleep, only rest, only peace. Good night. And remember, even the smallest person can change the course of the future. Sweet dreams, dear friend. The Shire will still be here when you wake. Good night. Good night.